So when COVID hit, it was extremely difficult because everything tripled. So we just didn't have enough food. So right at the beginning, we were going out buying it. We were trying to buy it, but all the shops had sold out with everything. And then we joined the Food Alliance.
Our food bank here, which then became our sort of main operation, where we were delivering food parcels to people that were shielding, weren't able to get out and weren't able to access food, and that's how we joined the Food Alliance.
We opened a community fridge at the front of our centre, where we provide free food to anybody that needs it, really. And the adult social care realised that we were getting an awful lot of traffic through the door and people with some very complex needs. We can provide education and training, because that's what we do, to help people back onto the workplace. And we also provide free food so people don't go hungry, but there was additional complex services that some of these people needed.
We've been primarily a place where people can come to pick up the food parcel, but obviously with the restrictions that people found, we had to move into more of a getting food out to people, getting the deliveries sorted out, which again for the Food Alliance has been a great help, because we've had organisations come in and provide drivers for us, which has helped get the food out.
So it literally stretched us. It kind of almost took us to that breaking point financially, and but also emotionally. The emotional strain on the team was immense, and really continues to be a challenge that we're having to confront on a weekly basis. Pre the first lockdown, I know we're now in our second lockdown, but pre our first lockdown, we were helping in the region of 20 families or 20 individuals any given week. Since March, we have exceeded helping up to 50 families a day. So we've been helping over 100 families during the course of the week. And that's across the food bank and the baby bank. But just recently, it has kind of silently gone quieter over the last few weeks, but we're anticipating an increase again over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
I think there wouldn't have been as many of us. So I think that there would have been like globules of us. So there would have been a little bit of a Torquay cluster, a Peyton cluster, and then I think Brixham would have just sort of done its own thing in the way that it quite often does. So I think they were kind of the glue that brought all of those relationships together.
It gave us the opportunity to engage with the other food banks and the other forms of food provision and community services and statutory bodies. It gave us a starting point to have conversations that ultimately benefit the people that we need to help. Before, we all engage with each other kind of in unofficial ways. We'd know kind of what each other was doing without really ever engaging with each other to say what we are doing and how we can work together. And the Torbay Food Alliance gave us that platform to be able to speak into what we're all doing and how we can ultimately support the people that are coming to us.
They became the central link to all the other services. I mean, when you work in a community, there is an awful lot of individual community organisations that nobody knows about. When we linked into the Food Alliance, and we already worked with some of the people that joined, but with all the other members that joined, we were then able to identify, you know, the assets that all those other companies bring.
Well, the pros were that we were able to share our practice, strengthen our food bank through that sharing of knowledge and information about how each of it operate. The fact that during the beginning of lockdown, it was so difficult to get hold of food and resources, to be able to then have that access to food that the Food Alliance was able to have made such a huge difference. And I think learning about what each other were doing and how they were operating, and knowing that if we weren't able to help someone, we could just reach out to one of our partners and, you know, come up with a solution for somebody. It was comforting for us as well as for the community, I think.
And we dealt with all the people in our local area by supplying cooked food out to them on a daily basis, including weekend packages. We were able to also link with other community organisations through the Alliance to be able to get volunteer drivers, so we could get those delivered out for us, because we were actually in there, you know, cooking every day as much as we could. So we had people like the probation service and the CDT provide us with drivers who used to come and just pick up the food and take it out. So because of the Alliance, it made that process much easier.
This Alliance just helped us to share that little bit more, and it helped us to raise funds to be able to even buy in bulk the things that we needed. So it all pulled us all together in that way.
The working alongside the Torbay Food Alliance since March, it's a great fit. It really is, because we're finding our place. We're all bringing and contributing something to the projects, to the initiatives, and we're celebrating one another.
Working with the statutory bodies, the trust element with them is not so much are the people doing things but for the right reasons, but will their own rules and regulations get in the way of them being able to support us the way that we needed to be supported? And I think Chris and Becky were so good at taking on a lot of the statutory body concerns and filtering out what was needed to us, and vice versa. And I trusted Chris and Becky very early on in the process. Without that trust, where are you? You do need that trust in the people who are that voice. But at no point did they give me any concerns that the NHS and the council were wanting anything different from us, other than wanting us to be the best that we could be together to meet the need that was obviously going to come with the pandemic.
They were so accommodating to us and understood that we were our own unique and individual sort of elements, and they didn't try and force us into a particular shape or a particular outcome, and that, I think, is what made the Food Alliance work, is that we were there collaborating, and I also found that they were really easy to communicate with. They had the time to speak to us. If we had a question, they had the answer, and you know, they had access to a lot more information, statutory data that we wouldn't normally have ease of access to, that all of a sudden was pouring in. It just made our planning so much easier.
Because there was a threefold in all of us, not just us, all of us doing a lot more, none of us had the time to do it. So we were all really struggling just to have the time to get our food parcels ready, get them out the door, do all the other things that we normally do just to survive. So it was having those there that had that bit of time to actually coordinate, like the fair share, when we had food coming from fair share.
It needs someone who's maybe not part of our organisations to be the kind of the cement in the bricks. It needs someone to be able to speak in and speak out of our own individual organisations, and speaking when we have our weekly meetings, speaking to Chris and Becky, having them running it gives them the opportunity to, they're not attached to any one of our organisations. They are purely doing this because they want the people who need the support to get served. And we can trust that because that's their motivation, because that's why they are doing it, we can speak to them about how we can help with that. And then they can make sure that we're all on the same page and moving forward together. And I think because of all the organisations who are part of the Torbay Food Alliance ultimately want what's best for the person who's coming to our doors, it's made it such a straightforward process.
We look after vulnerable people that come to our centre, but we were able to look after the wider community, which is something we've always wanted to do.
Different organisations have had to defend his or her own patch, because we're all fishing from the same pond. We're all going to the same people for grants and for so we've become very defensive of, this is my patch, so I'm going to defend it. And on my own, I don't make up the full picture. Yet when I'm connected into other groups, when my little bit of jigsaw puzzle fits into the other jigsaw puzzle piece, all of a sudden you get this far better, that there's clarity to what we're trying to do and to achieve, because together we make the picture.
Yeah, it's easy to say, oh, let's all get together and do something. But you do have to have that trust, because if you don't trust the other people, it's not going to work.
One of the cons was I seem to struggle to get to our 9 o'clock meetings, so I do apologise for that. I think that where there's been some practice that differs slightly, so some of us did delivery, some of us didn't, it perhaps might have caused a little bit of confusion, but I think we got over that as a community.
I think with anything that's new, you're going to have bumps in the road, and obviously that when we were setting up, there were things that maybe you think, oh, that could be working better that way, this could be working better that way, why is that person doing that? But it was always going to be like that, because you're taking 12 organizations that historically haven't worked with each other to the level that we began working with each other, with people speaking into it who also didn't know us personally that well. So there were always going to be bumps, but the progress that we made in such a rapid time, at a time when the community really needed us to step up, I think it's just amazing what we've all managed to do together. And whether that's the people who are involved, the groups who are involved in the Food Alliance, or the people that have been kind of speaking into it from the NHS and council, it's made such a difference to how we operate as a collective.
What we would do in the past is we would focus on what we disagree on, and that would cause division, and it would cause a separation. Whereas what the Food Alliance has done for us, it's given us a common goal, and it's actually highlighted that organizations, individuals have more in common than what they realized they had. And instead of working on the negative, we're now focusing on the positive, and we're working on what we agree on instead of fighting over what we disagree on.
Was ever a big bump? There were things that maybe took longer to iron out than it could have done. But again, how quickly we formed and what we managed to do in such a short space of time, to me, it's just amazing that we were able to do that at all. And you've got to accept that there will be bumps. It's not going to be easy, but as long as the motivations of why people are doing it are correct, then you'll get there in the end.
We all panicked, and just food parcels were going out here, there, and everywhere. But actually, you know, it's brilliant now. This time round, on the second lockdown, the numbers haven't gone up as much, because there's a lot more in place, and everybody knows much more now.
We've got to make sure that the systems and the processes serve us, and we don't end up serving or becoming a slave to process and to system. So one of the things that we've got to constantly keep looking and learning is, just because we did it then doesn't mean we do it now.
We can only go by what we've seen here, but I'd imagine and I'd hope that there's people who are very community minded, voluntary, statutory body wise across Britain, and it's not so much about lucking out, it's just about making sure that the motivations and why we do what we do are for the right reasons.
We're not all going to have exactly the same ideas. That's never going to happen. Although we are an alliance, we all do our own thing. But we trust each other, and that's the main thing, and we trust that everybody's doing the job that they're there to do and doing the best they can.
So working together is priority, celebrating one another, not being threatened or competing against one another, but complementing one another and bringing something to the table that we can make an impact into Torbay and even beyond Torbay. So that's what we're here about, and that's what we're here for.
I think if somebody's thinking of doing this and building their own alliance, go for it. You know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Listen to everybody, listen to what everybody else does, and just try and work together and put aside any differences that are there, because they don't matter, because what matters is that we're helping people.
The council and the NHS, they're here to serve the people. We have, as a voluntary organisations, we have probably more people come to us and tell us what their real need is, rather than maybe an NHS body or a council body who you might have to tick certain boxes to actually get support, to get listened to. We probably see people a bit more raw than what the council and the NHS do. And it gives, with the council and the NHS working with us, they can it probably can influence what decisions they make in the future by what we are telling them now.
They come to us and they trust us to help them, and then we then engage them with the people that come into the centre, the professionals, people we have drugs and alcohol, and we would, you know, desperately like to have the domestic abuse services in there along with the adult services, but the adult services are able to access all those other NHS services with us much more directly than we can, and that gives a full service to the person that comes into you.
We can move forward talking to each other about what support we can provide people, as opposed to just maybe knowing what each other was doing because we read it on Facebook. We're actually engaged in conversations now that are ultimately going to benefit the people that we're supporting.
For us, with all that help and assistance that we can provide that person that's come to the centre, they then come back later when their life's more on track, and then they want to know how they can help their community. And that's really important, because they've then able to go through the scenarios they've gone through, make themselves better, and then come back in to offer support to people like themselves. And that's been absolutely wonderful. And we've had individual stories where that has actually happened. And, you know, that's exactly what we want. We want the community to care about the community.
The Salvation Army have a debt service that's come online in the last few months. That it was always meant to come online during 2020, but obviously the need is going to be even greater as time goes on. So it's great to have this service in place. We're already doing some really good things across the bay, and look forward to supporting more people from a fundamental level of why they need the food parcels. And I think collectively with the Torbay Food Alliance, we're looking at ways as a collective as how we can address the underlying issues of what creates food poverty in people's lives. I
think everybody's end goal is that actually we're not needed anymore. That none of these services that we do are actually needed in the end, that we can all go off and do something else, because people don't need food parcels anymore. People don't need hot meals anymore. And that's all our end game, isn't it, I think?
Be fantastic, wouldn't it?